expenses that these employers didn't have before once you start putting them on the books.
Right. Well, and that is a hidden, almost positive to this, is that if they set this up now, that these people are here, semi-legally, so that they have to be paying taxes, and if you're employed, they have to be reported and all of this, fewer illegal immigrants will actually be hired, because if suddenly it becomes an issue where the government is now involved, saying, okay, these people deserve to be paid the minimum wage just like anybody else. I don't agree with that whole, that's an entirely separate issue, the minimum wage is, but I think this could be almost a positive effect, because it's going to lessen the number of people who are looking for illegal immigrants to hire. That's going to change the entire ballgame of why people come to the United States.
Or the ballgame of, if you come to the United States, you're not coming to hide, you are coming to be a legal citizen and to do as others do.
Right.
So,
I mean, there are multiple ways to look at it, but my frustration with this is that this whole idea that the right and obligation to work that she comes up with in this statement is, nobody has the right to work. To say that is to say that you have the right to demand a job from someone. You don't. The only reason, and a lot of times the only reason these people are being hired is because they can be hired at a lower cost than anyone else. So what I'm saying is, these people probably will not be hired. If somebody has a choice between paying an illegal immigrant or paying a non-illegal immigrant who can speak English and can be a contributing member of the workforce more so than just doing grunt work, people are probably going to pick the person who can speak English, and they're not going to go for the person that they have to pay the same amount who can't. It may actually be more harmful to illegal immigrants trying to make a living than helpful.
And also, we have to keep in mind that a person who has the mindset of there is this right to work idealism is the same group of people who believe there is this right not to work. You know what I'm saying? It's the same group of people who say, if you don't want to work, why should you have to work? The government can pay for your health care. The government can find you a house. The government will feed you and clothe you, especially if you have children. Why should you have to suffer and starve if you have children? We will pay for you. So I always get scared when they always say a right to, because the second you have a right to do something, then that means you also have a right not to do it. And the government should not be deciding what you have a right to do and not to do. That should be your own. You have to want to work. The government should not say they should be assigning you jobs, or if you can't find one, they will force someone to hire you. You have to want to work. You have to earn it. And if you don't work, then you have to suffer the consequences of not doing so. And it should not be the government or the taxpayers who come in and rescue you, whatever your decision may be.
Exactly, and that's another entire issue.
Right.
Immigration is such a a nuanced issue. It has to do with economics. It has to do with welfare. It has to do with so many different little things, and they all come together to make one big hairy mess for us to deal with. And it's like, are these people, now that they are going to be legally in the United States, legally paying taxes out of their paycheck, are they now eligible for welfare even more than they were before? And how many more people are going to go on to welfare at that point? Becomes a very big issue.
Yeah, and my only solace in this is, if she should win the nomination, which I really don't see how, even though the Republicans run both sections of Congress, I don't see how they can hold this off much longer. I mean, they are going to have to nominate her. The president is not going to give them someone else that they can interrogate through the hilt. It's her or, nothing. And I don't think they should fight this battle. Let's just be satisfied that she will only be there for 2 years. How much damage can she do in that time? I shudder to think. But it would only be for the 2 years, and then we would get rid of her and replace her with hopefully a Republican president's choice, which will be much nicer. Yes. Which will be someone who will adhere to the law. That's all I want. I regardless of if they're a Democrat or a Republican pick, I just want an attorney general who is going to adhere to the laws with which we have. That's it. I don't think that's too much to ask for. I don't want someone who is going to lead and choose by their heart and by their own convictions. I want you to have them, surely. I'm not saying you shouldn't have your own personal ideals and things of that nature, but the law is the law, and you can't decide what you will and won't, prosecute because you don't agree with it. Tough.
Right. Well, it's not the Attorney General's job to decide that. That's the legislative branch. That's Congress
Right.
who needs to be deciding on that, or or the judicial branch. That's their job. It's not the Attorney General's job whatsoever to come up with those decisions. But in her favor, she doesn't seem to be much worse than Eric Holder.
Right.
I'll give her that.
She's the same.
So
she's the female version, so whatever.
Yeah, she's just the female version of Eric Holder. She's not really any worse. Which I was thinking that whoever we were going to get was going to be much worse. So that my threshold for annoyance was pretty set. So I'm less annoyed by this person than I could have been.
Right. Okay. So what do you got for us?
Well. My first one is that the Mormon Church is apparently changing their position on LGBT discrimination laws, which I don't agree with discrimination laws. I think they're stupid. It goes against the entire idea of the free market. But it is interesting that the Mormon Church changed their position on this. That they said they wanted a law that would protect religious organizations just as much as it protected gay people, but that they were in favor of this legislation. Now, before this morning, I was going to talk about on the show, I was going to talk about the fact that this possibly had something to do with Mitt Romney running for president. That they were changing their stance on this so that it wouldn't be an attacking point to use on Mitt Romney. And of course, he's now no longer going to be running. He's already admitted to that. So that is something that, I don't think it's a part of that. But maybe the Mormon Church did change it because they thought he was going to run. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Mormon Church has always been seen as a kind of odd outlier in the Christian community by a lot of people. Like whenever they atheists like a Bill Maher or something like that wants to poke fun at Christians, they will usually go to the oddities of the Mormon Church because there are pretty distinct oddities about them. I'm not gonna lie. There are. I mean, really obvious ones. But I don't know where they're, like you said, what the real story behind. Is this really because they're changing with the times, or was this a political move? Was this, what is their end game with this? And I want to question it simply because it is the Mormon Church, and they are, I don't want to say weirdos, but, I would be less surprised if it was the Catholic Church, because they're not seen as doing something for time's sake. Like they are rooted in more tradition, whereas I don't know what the Mormon Church is rooted in. So if they make a move like this, it is pretty strange, and I wouldn't. I don't know. The Latter-day Saints, they're the kind of people that I don't know them. Because you hear stories and you don't know what's real and what isn't, and they're very secretive and very to themselves, and it's a very.
Well, I mean, they did come out. They'll talk to you about their religion. Clearly,
right.
I mean, you get them knocking on your door,
right?
But
on days outside of Saturday and Sunday now. Right, the little tricksters.
Coming on other days. But, well, I mean, we have a pretty big Mormon population here in Mesa. The city of Mesa is filled with them, as far as I know. But they're not the worst of the worst. They're a little odd. They're an odd community of people. But when it comes down to it, they're a church that really puts emphasis on good works and responsibility and giving to charity and that sort of thing. And I can't fault them for that.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, they're a very responsible church. So
they're very mission oriented.
They are. They're very for doing good works and as a way to get into heaven. So and when it comes down to it, most Mormons are generally pretty nice people. You might not agree with them, but they're not jerks, because they don't want to do anything to hurt their own chances of getting into paradise. So, but they have made decisions based on what was convenient for them at the time. In the past, I remember that before they bought PepsiCo, which is now a Mormon-owned company, they could not drink caffeine. That was one of the rules of the Mormon Church. After they bought PepsiCo, lo and behold, suddenly they were able to drink caffeine in the Mormon Church. As far as I know, they changed about that time. So they made that change, obviously, because of that purchase. But this could be either way. It could be political. It could be just that they think gay people should not be discriminated against. Either way, I don't agree with the discrimination laws. I think they should all be cut from the books as far as that goes. But it is interesting that they decided to do this.
Right, and of course this is going on in Utah, which I'm assuming has a large populace of LDS members. I mean, it's saying in the state legislature that 62% of their population identify as LDS. That's a lot.
It is. It's a huge area for them. But you know who I would like to know the opinion on this? I would love to know Mia Love's opinion on this. Because she's a Mormon.
Right.
And, you know, I would like to know what she has to say about it, but I doubt she's going to come out and talk about it.
Right, and then my other question would be, because this is happening in Utah, will it be affecting the Church of Latter-day Saints in all 50 states? Like, I don't, like, again, like, the LDS is a bit different. They run a bit differently than the Catholic Church or than even my Episcopal Church. Like, or, you know, when the Pope says something, it passes through the entire globe. But, you know, when the little state of Utah makes a big shift like this, is it speaking for all of the Mormon churches, or is it just speaking for the community in Utah?
Well, I mean, I'm not Mormon, so I don't know. But as far as I know, like, their main church is in Utah. So when the main church makes a statement like that, it's basically changing the dogma or the theology for the entire church.
Right.
But I honestly don't know how that's going to affect, because not all Mormon churches even listen to.
Right, because I'm wondering, do they get a vote? Like, do the Mormon churches in all the other states or in the entire world get a vote in this, or is it just down to, you know, the church in Utah? You know, like like you said, we don't know what their hierarchy ladder looks like. I don't know who they turn to. Do they have their own pope? I don't know I don't even know what their clergy people are called. I have no idea. I have their Mormon Bible, and I have read it. I can say that. I do have the Book of Mormon. But we won't go into that because I have many issues with it we don't have time for. So I will leave it at that. But I will say that I am, you know, versed in the book that they use in their religion. So I don't know. Let's see what happens after this. Because they haven't voted yet, as far as I know, right? They're going to.
They haven't voted on the law at all, no. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this affects the bill in Utah. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the culture in general responds to the Mormon Church changing this. Because a lot of people, a lot of liberals, hate the Mormon Church because they've been seen as anti-gay and and pro, straight therapy and things like that. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they react.
Mm-hmm. All right, so what's going on with Megyn Kelly over here?
Well, so this story came out the other day about how Huckabee was saying that women shouldn't curse, and that women in, like, New York City and Los Angeles and areas like that, they're just totally trashy compared to women in the, Midwest. And, they shouldn't be cursing and stuff like that. But my real problem with this is, why is he running for president? All he seems to be wanting to talk about is how, like, Beyonce is trashy and women are trashy and curse too much. And I'm thinking, why isn't he just getting, like, a cable show to talk about religion? Because that sounds like what he wants to do.
Well, he had one and he gave it up in order to run, so...
Well, yeah, but maybe he needs like an event, he needs to be like an event evangelist, televangelist, go out there and talk about, how you need to give your life back to God and stop being so, trashy and horrible, and stop using foul language and stop listening to pop music because it's all evil and it's the work of the devil. That's basically what he sounds like in this campaign. And I'm thinking, Does he even know how to campaign? Has he ever